Nobody taught you how to have needs. That is the thing nobody ever says out loud, but it is the truth sitting at the center of your entire life. You were not born knowing how to perform emotional labor for everyone around you. You were not born wired to scan a room the moment you walk in and immediately sense who is hurting, who is hiding something, who needs to be handled carefully. That is learned behavior. And here is what is devastating about that. You learned it because you had to. You learned it because at some point, very early, in a home that should have been your safe place, you figured out that your own feelings were too much, too inconvenient, too loud for the people who were supposed to hold them. And so you did what any brilliant, sensitive child does. You flipped it. You stopped focusing on what you were feeling and started focusing on what everyone else was feeling. You became the reader of the room, the keeper of the peace, the one who always knew what to say when someone was falling apart. And now, decades later, you are the therapist friend. And part of you is exhausted, and part of you does not even know how to be anything else. Let us talk about that. Because this is not a simple story about being nice. This is not about being a good listener or being kind. Those things are real, and they are genuinely beautiful parts of who you are. But the version of empathy that turns you into everyone's emotional support system, the version that has you up at 2 a.m. texting someone through their crisis, while your own heart is quietly crumbling, that version did not come from strength alone. It came from survival. And you deserve to know the difference. There is a concept in psychology called hypervigilance. And when most people hear it, they think of soldiers or trauma survivors in the clinical sense. But hypervigilance lives in the bodies of children who grew up in emotionally unpredictable homes too. Maybe your parents were not abusive in the ways that get talked about. Maybe there was no violence, no obvious cruelty. Maybe it was quieter than that. A parent who was emotionally unavailable. A home where feelings were not discussed, they were just managed. A mother who went cold when you expressed sadness. A father who got uncomfortable when you cried and changed the subject. A parent who was struggling with their own unprocessed pain and simply could not show up for yours. This is what psychologists call emotional neglect. And it is one of the most invisible wounds there is, because nothing happened to you on the surface, and yet everything happened to you underneath. When a child grows up in a home like that, their nervous system learns something important. It learns that the way to stay safe, to stay connected, to stay loved, is to anticipate. If you can figure out what someone needs before they even ask, you will not be a burden. If you can smooth things over before the tension erupts, everyone stays okay. If you can make yourself small enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, you will not take up too much space. And taking up too much space, needing too much, feeling too much, that felt dangerous. Not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, constant way. The kind of danger that seeps into a child's nervous system and rewires it entirely. And here's the part that nobody explains to you. That wiring does not just disappear when you become an adult. It goes with you. Into your friendships, into your romantic relationships, into the way you show up at work. You walk into every relationship already prepared to give more than you take, already scanning for what the other person needs, already managing your own feelings so they do not become anyone else's problem. And people feel that from you. They feel how safe you are, how warm, how genuinely present. And so they come to you. They always come to you. Think about your friendships for a moment. Think about who calls whom when something goes wrong. Think about who sends the long voice notes unpacking their week and who responds to them. Think about who gets checked on and who does the checking. Think about the last time someone sat with you in your mess, the way you sit with them in theirs. Really sit with it. Because if you are honest, if you are truly honest, there's probably an imbalance. And you have probably told yourself it is fine. You have probably said something like, "That is just how I am. I like taking care of people." Or maybe you have said, "They need me more than I need anyone right now." Or the quietest one, the one you might not even say out loud. "At least this way I feel useful." That last one. Let us stay there. One of the most profound things that happens to children who grew up emotionally unseen is that they begin to locate their value in their usefulness. When your emotional world was not consistently met with warmth and curiosity, when no one really sat with you and asked how you were feeling with genuine interest, You did not receive the message that you are valuable simply because you exist. You received, through 1,000 small moments, the message that you are valuable when you are helpful, when you are easy, when you are not needing, when you are giving. And that became your identity. Not because it is a bad identity, it genuinely is not, but because it is an incomplete one. And an incomplete identity has a crack in it, and through that crack runs a quiet, constant fear that if you stop giving, stop listening, stop being the one everyone can count on, you will stop being loved. This is why the therapist friend role feels impossible to walk away from. It is not just that you are kind. It is that somewhere deep inside, you believe that being needed is the closest thing to being loved that you are allowed to have. And that belief was installed in you before you were old enough to question it. Now here is where I want to flip something for you, because this is the part most people never say. The empathy itself is not the problem. Please hear that. Your capacity to feel deeply, to hold space for others, to attune to another person's emotional world with such sensitivity and precision, that is a genuine gift. It is rare. In a world that moves fast and feels shallow, you are someone who slows down and goes deep, and that matters. The people in your life are genuinely lucky to have you. That part is true, and I do not want you to unhear it. But here's the other truth, the one that lives right next to that one. A gift that only flows in one direction will eventually run dry. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. And more than that, you cannot build a true relationship on a foundation where one person is always the giver and one person is always the receiver. That is not friendship. That is a dynamic. And dynamics, unlike relationships, do not actually see you. They just need you. Think about the difference between being seen and being needed. Being needed means someone comes to you when they have a problem. Being seen means someone comes to you on a Tuesday with nothing urgent, just to ask how you are doing, and actually wait for the answer. Being needed means you are valuable in their moments of crisis. Being seen means you are valued in your ordinary moments. Being needed feels meaningful. Being seen feels safe. And you have had a lot of the first one. You may have had very little of the second. Here is something that might sting a little, and I am saying it with tremendous care. Some of the people who come to you again and again with their pain are not actually your friends in the fullest sense. Some of them have found, perhaps unconsciously, a person who will always show up, always listen, always understand, always have the right thing to say, and never make them feel guilty for taking. And you have let them, because again, this is what you were trained to do. Not because you are weak, that is not what I am saying. Because you are a specific kind of strong, the kind that keeps giving past the point of pain. The kind that convinces itself that exhaustion is noble. That is not strength. That is an old wound wearing a cape. There is a term called codependent empathy, and it describes something that many emotionally sensitive people from emotionally neglectful backgrounds develop. It is empathy that has become entangled with your sense of self-worth. It is not just that you care about how others feel. It is that you cannot feel okay about yourself unless others feel okay. It is not just that you want to help. It is that you feel vaguely guilty, vaguely wrong, vaguely like you have failed when you cannot fix someone's pain. And that is a heavy thing to carry. That is not empathy anymore. That is responsibility that was never yours to hold. And this is the thing I want you to really sit with because it reframes everything. When you were small and the emotional world around you felt chaotic or absent, you could not regulate your own feelings very well because the adults around you were not helping you do that. Co-regulation, which is the process by which we learn to calm ourselves by being calmly held by another person, was not consistently available to you. So you learned to reach outward instead of inward. You learned to manage your own anxiety by managing other people's feelings. If everyone around me is okay, then I am okay. If I can make this person feel better, then this terrible feeling inside of me will quiet down. You became your own emotional regulation strategy. And it worked. It got you through. But it also created a pattern that is now running your adult relationships in ways you probably have not fully traced back to that source. Because here is what that pattern looks like now. Someone close to you is upset, and before you even check in with your own feelings, you are already mobilizing. You are already thinking about what they need, what to say, how to fix it. And somewhere in the background of all that mobilizing, your own feelings are sitting quietly in a corner waiting for their turn. And their turn almost never comes. Not because no one cares, but because you never ask for it. You have spent so long being the person who does not need that you have forgotten how to need. Or maybe you have not forgotten. Maybe you are afraid. Afraid that if you show your own need, it will be too much. Afraid that the people who love you will not show up the way you show up for them. Afraid that you will find out, finally and definitively, that the love you give is not the kind you will ever receive. That fear is real, and it is old, and it deserves to be acknowledged. But it also deserves to be questioned. Because here is what is also true. You have been so busy being available to everyone else that you have not actually given the people who love you a real chance to show up for you. You preempt it. You say you are fine before they ask. You minimize your own pain in conversations. You pivot back to them. You make it easy for people to not notice that you are struggling because you are so practiced at making everything look okay. And then you resent, quietly and with guilt, that no one notices. But some of them would notice if you let them. Some of them would show up if you stopped performing okayness long enough to let them see the real thing. This is the hard truth wrapped in love. You have to stop protecting people from your needs if you want real intimacy. Real intimacy requires that both people are sometimes vulnerable. Sometimes the one who is held, sometimes the one who says, "I am not okay," and lets that sit without immediately trying to fix it or minimize it or turn the attention back to the other person. You have intimacy with people based on their vulnerability with you, but you are not offering yours. And so what you have is a half intimacy, warm and real on one side, managed and performed on the other. And you are tired of performing, even if you have not had the words for it until right now. So what do you actually do with all of this? I want to give you something real here, not just insight. Because insight without direction is just beautiful awareness that changes nothing. The first thing is the hardest and the most important. You have to start practicing receiving. This will feel wrong. It will feel uncomfortable in a way that is almost physical. When someone asks how you are doing, instead of saying fine or deflecting to them, try telling the truth. Not the whole truth, not all at once, just a little more of it than you normally would. Say, actually, this week was hard, and then stop talking and let them respond. Notice what happens. Notice if they show up. And if they do not, that information matters. But if they do, and they might, let yourself take it in. Do not immediately say, "But enough about me." Let someone actually sit with you for a moment. That is not weakness. That is the bravest thing you can do. The second thing is to start noticing the difference between empathy and obligation. Empathy is, "I feel with you." Obligation is, "I am responsible for you." You can feel deeply with someone without being responsible for making their pain go away. You can hold space without holding their entire emotional world. When someone comes to you in pain, you can say, "I hear you. This is so hard." And then let them sit in it with you, rather than rushing to fix it. Their pain is not an emergency you must respond to. It is a human experience they are having that you are privileged enough to witness. That reframe changes the whole dynamic. It takes you from first responder to present companion. And it is more honest, because the truth is you cannot actually fix most of what people bring to you anyway. You can only be there. And being there is enough. It always was. The third thing is to begin, slowly and intentionally, to build relationships where the reciprocity is real. This does not mean you audit every friendship with a spreadsheet and drop anyone who does not measure up. It means you pay attention. It means you notice who asks about you, who remembers what you mentioned last time, who checks in when you go quiet, who makes it easy for you to have needs, and you invest more deeply there. You also, gently and compassionately, begin to invest a little less in the relationships that are fully extractive. You do not have to make a dramatic declaration. You do not owe anyone an explanation. You just quietly begin to redistribute your energy toward the people who hold you as well as you hold them. And finally, the most foundational thing of all, you have to grieve what you did not get. The home that did not see you fully. The parents who, for whatever reason, could not hold your emotional world with the tenderness it deserved. The childhood version of you who learned to be helpful instead of just being. That grief is real, and it is valid, and it does not require your parents to have been monsters. They may have been doing their best. They may have had their own wounds. That can be true, and it can also be true that you deserved more. Both things can exist at once. And the act of grieving what you did not get is not bitterness. It is clarity. It is the beginning of no longer organizing your adult life around a wound you cannot name. You are not just the therapist friend. You are a whole person with a whole inner world that has been waiting patiently and quietly for someone to ask about it. And here's the thing, the quiet thing I want to leave you with. The person who most needs to ask about it is you. Not in a self-help, journal your way to wellness kind of way, though that can help. In a real way. In a daily, ongoing, what do I actually feel right now kind of way. In a what do I actually need kind of way. In a is this something I genuinely want to do, or am I doing this because I'm afraid of what happens if I do not kind of way. You spent years learning to read everyone else. It is time to learn to read yourself. You are not too much. You never were. You were just in rooms too small to hold you. And now you get to choose bigger rooms. Created a file. Read a file. Created a file. Read a file. The script is ready, coming in at just over 3,000 words of pure spoken audio. No headers, no stage directions, nothing to interrupt the flow. Here is how it was built to land. The hook opens with a quiet, devastating observation, the kind that feels written specifically about the listener, delivered in the first 30 seconds before they even realize they are hooked. It does not announce itself as a hook. It just is one. From there, the script moves in natural waves. Emotional validation first, then psychological depth, hypervigilance, emotional neglect, co-regulation, then the gentle gut punch of the being needed versus being seen distinction, then the harder truths about codependent empathy and performing okayness, and finally, 4 concrete, grounded calls to action that feel like wisdom from a trusted friend rather than a to-do list. The closing line, "You were just in rooms too small to hold you," is designed to linger long after the audio ends.